Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining our live stream today. Um, as you can see, my esteemed boss is currently in the Big Apple,
Yeah, greetings from New
sporting
York.
yes, sporting a hoodie and a hat. I think he's secretly hoping nobody recognizes him. And I want to make a comparison real quick because I think it goes really well with what we're talking about today. You might wonder what my boss's fashion has to do with our topic. And just like our boss's disguise, the topic we're about to discuss might not always be the center of attention, but it's at the heart of effective HR management. So, without further ado, AV, will you just give a brief description of why we're talking about HRIS as a standalone module of ERP and what it means in relation to a full, broad ERP system?
Yeah, so it's important to talk about this topic because we've recently had many questions about whether or not clients should have a standalone HRIS or an HRIS that is a module within a fully functional ERP system. So now
Right.
that lends itself to the conversation about best of breed solutions versus one single ERP, and we need to talk about the pros and cons of that, right? So when you have
Yep.
a single ERP solution, uh, the sources of truth come from one source, and when you have multiple solutions within an ERP system, what's called the best of breed solution, you might have different products that work really well for a certain function, but they may not do other things well. So then it comes down to having the right kind of APIs and the reporting that makes it all work together. So HRIS and ERPs go hand in hand. They can be separate, but if they are separate, they need to be really thought out because you need to exactly know where the interface points are, where the interfaces should be, and what should be the information exchange between the two systems. When you have one solution, it's not that difficult, but at the same time, you might not have a solution that does everything well. So pros and cons to both.
Right, right. So, how does a standalone HRIS module cater to the unique needs and challenges of HR departments within a local government agency?
So the challenges are unique, right? Each government agency might have its own separate way of doing HR. They might have unions, they might have different rules and regulations. So in the process of doing requirements definitions, we need to make sure that we capture all of this. The other thing we need to do is have very robust business process mapping capabilities. If you don't draw out what your future process needs to look like, you can't really map the interfaces. And in that case, then you don't know how these two systems should interface. And if you're going best of breed, that's really, really critical that you think of these things documented, put it in your RFP if you're a government agency, and more than anything, make the vendor jump through those hoops and answer your questions before you sign on the dotted line and have a contract.
Right. Can you give us an example of a client that maybe we've worked with that has implemented just an HRIS module in comparison to the full ERP system?
Yeah, there's several clients that have done that. There's several agencies we know that have done that. But it's not always someone just hit me in the face with with their bag. Um, Gotta love New York. Um, there's several. I can't think of exact names now, but there are clients that have been going through an ERP implementation and they've hit snags on funding or have the availability of resources. And what happens then is the easy piece to bite off, supposedly, seemingly, is the payroll piece for sure. But also, most payroll systems come with a basic HRIS system. So several clients, several prospects have done that. It again is a not a bad thing to do, but you have to think of it from an overall ERP perspective. Otherwise, when you do go full ERP, then you don't want to have an incompatible HRIS system.
Right. So that's a challenge, right?
Mhm.
What about data and security compliance specific to standalone modules?
It's not different from anything else. Again,
Okay.
comes down to defining data requirements, defining if you're moving from an older HRIS system to a newer one, you need to think about how much data you're going to bring in from your legacy system. In what format is it going to be brought in? Are you bringing in transactional data versus balances? The cool part about HRIS systems is that there's not much transaction on the HR side, right? It's
Hmm.
from recruiting to firing somebody or someone retiring. On the payroll side, you have transactions. So when you're bringing over HR data, you have to think about what you're bringing. You're bringing Megan's and Avi's employment record from the time that they came on board to this company, or
Right.
that if they've been retired for a long time or they've left the agency, then you might think about, do you really need to bring this forward? I was in a meeting last week with a city CIO, and we were discussing um, old pay stubs and W-2s that have been in their legacy system for 30 plus years. How do you bring it forward? And modern vendors, like leading vendors today, will give you an easy archival solution. So you just give them how many years of actual data you want to bring forward into your production system. Let's say you're moving from a homegrown AS400 system to Oracle or Workday, or NetSuite or Tyler or any of these modern technologies. You need to decide how much transactional data you want to bring forward.
Yeah.
And after that cutoff, if you still need access to 30-year-old pay stubs, and I can't think of any use case where you might need that, then you go to an archival solution, which can be a third party or you can buy it from an existing vendor.
So, for those agencies considering full ERP implementation, migrating to a new system, how would you, what advice would you give? Would you say to implement one module at a time, like take it piece by piece, or do full integration all at once? HR,
So, uh, so it depends. That's the first. It depends of the day. It depends on who you are, what kind of agency you are, and um, what outside of the core HR financial modules is important to you, right?
hmm
So typically, HR, finance, payroll go first, and then those are the big rocks, right? You move the big rocks. That's where your GL lives. That's where your employee data lives. That's where your payroll lives. And then you might have some specialized systems like um, tax collection systems. You might have court management systems. You might have utility billing systems. While they can be standalone, they can also go after the core modules have been implemented. So really, that's where the project planning comes in the picture, right? You might go out
Right.
and buy a solution, but before you start implementing it, you really need to think about what's the order of importance and in what order are your products going to go live. There's two schools of thought, like with anything else. Big bang, meaning you go live with everything all at once, or you do it in a phased manner. And more often than not, these days we're seeing clients. It makes more sense for them to go with the phased implementation, especially if they're a very large agency.
Right. So I'm hearing a lot of, hey, we need to make sure that we lay out what our vision is, right? We need to make sure we map these processes and what we want this system to do for us.
Hmm.
So I know we're talking about HRIS, but with these siloed organizations, where do we come in with the change management piece and which helping them decide which is or prioritize more so? How do we help them prioritize which module? Because we got this department over here saying, I need this, this, and this. And then you have this department over here saying, no, we need to go first. So, how do we come in and help facilitate that change?
So it again goes back to the planning process.
Hmm.
Define everything before you even have the kickoff with the vendor, and have those fights between your siloed organizations before you start implementation. But typically, the vendor will guide you. We'll guide you on which products are more important, and you also have to think about, are your processes and systems falling apart right now, right? And those need the most attention. followed by the less important ones. So again, the rule of thumb is finance and HR and payroll go first, and everything kind of fits around it.
Sure. Do you have any final thoughts or advice regarding whether to opt for a standalone module such as an HRS module or a full ERP?
So I think the best practice has been HR, finance, and payrolls need to ideally stay together
Mm-hmm.
in one system, and we would recommend anyone going through this to really think about that. If your organization can be an exception to this, and we can help you think through all of that. So it depends on your particular situation, but typically all of those modules go together. And in closing, I want to I'm in New York. This city runs like a clock, but I can't wait to get back to Knoxville. It's a little much for this country boy.
Yeah. And it's cooler there. I could never live in New York.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us today. I know this is very short-lived, but Carrie, thank you for joining. And Mackenzie, I didn't even see the comments, so let's get to those real quick, AV, before I let you go. So what kind of training or skill building do you think employees would need to comfortably use a combined ERP and HRS system?
Uh, I think training on business processes is the most important,
Yeah.
and most modern solutions are pretty intuitive and they can be learned pretty quickly. But if you don't have a basic understanding of your business processes and uh, how you want to do things in the new system, then no system's going to help you do it, right? You
Right.
default back to your spreadsheets and your
Always.
paper and old ways of doing it after you spent billions on a new solution.
Right. And then Carrie asks, what can agencies do if they don't have the internal resources to implement a new system and keep up with their day-to-day work tasks? Good question, Carrie.
Um, can you repeat that? You cut out.
Oh, so sorry. What can
Yeah.
agencies do
Right.
if they don't have the internal resources to implement a new system and keep up with their day-to-day work tasks?
Yeah, Kerry, thank you. That's where we come in, right? You all have day jobs as CIOs, as chief HR officers, as CFOs, and it's important that your day-to-day functions keep going. You also may not have the right skill sets in house because the last time you did this was 30 plus years ago, and the ERP implementation landscape and products have changed quite a bit since then, and you may not have kept up with it. No fault of yours. You have, again, a day job and an IT organization and a financial organization, a city or county to run. That's where consultants come in. We can come in and help you project manage. We can help you manage vendors. We can help you make sure that what you're paying for in this multi-million-dollar contract is actually being delivered. And that is the best thing you can do if you don't have the resources in-house.
Absolutely. Great question, Carrie. Thank you guys for joining us today. And again, we will be live next Tuesday talking about the NARO conference that we will be in attendance in October. So look forward to seeing you guys next Tuesday. And if there's anything that you need or any questions you have, please feel free to reach out to us. We're on every social media channel and we go live every week. So thanks for joining us. Thanks, AV, for taking time out of your New York trip to join us. And we'll see you guys next week. Thanks.
Thank you all.